Hi, everyone. My name is Keisha.
And my name is Sherry, and we are your guides to an enlightened pathway. Thanks for joining us. We're new at this, so excuse us if we make a little bit of mistakes and have some issues, but we are going to try this live now and give you some good information about having a mindset that is actually not up or current is not current, that you're still in um your past as far as your thinking, and when it comes to relationships, it can be it could stagnate the relationship, and it could cause the relationship to fail. So that's what we're talking about today. I'm going to give it over to Keisha so she could start off with some points and just, uh, type in and let us know if you have any questions. Okay, Keisha.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we think about relationships and how we might be in a 5, 6, 7 year relationship, and we look up one day and we're like, oh my gosh, my mate is so boring. This relationship is not exciting anymore. He's changed or she's changed. And we're not taking into consideration that we all change, we all are evolving and moving forward in our lives. And sometimes it may look like things are no longer exciting because we haven't embraced the change and we're not open and looking at our relationship as something new and different, but something that's also probably for the better because we're staying in that complacent mindset of, I just want it to be the way it used to be. A lot of times we'll say that and not realizing that the perspective we should really have is we're all changing as individuals and evolving. However, if you want your mate to stay the same because that's something that was so exciting and captivating when maybe you first got together, it just doesn't look good in the long run because that means that you don't want your mate to grow. You're not open to change, even though you're changing, and you're not open to your mate being a better person. As we get older, we are going to change our mindset, hopefully, because we're having experiences that shape us, that give us new perspectives. Because when we were, say, for instance, 18, we're looking at life a certain way. We're living at home. We haven't gone out to the world yet. We're in college. We're still under our parents' uh, financial, and a lot of times our parents, they're not just financially helping us, but they're giving us suggestions and advice as to how to navigate life. So we're not experiencing too much at 18. Fast forward 26, a lot of us have graduated. We might have graduated with just a bachelor's or maybe a master's. We've gone through a lot of things. Excuse me, y'all, that's my grandbaby. We've gone through a lot of stuff by the time we're 25, 26 versus 18 years of age. And of course, we don't look the same. We don't
Hmm.
look the same in terms of how we probably dress, how we are talking to other people. We are so maybe blunt or having that certain vernacular. Like when you're 18, you're using slang. You want to get out of using so much slang by the time you're 25, 26 because you're probably going into the workforce. It's just a lot of different things that on a micro level we're changing constantly, I should say changing. So why are we holding our partners to this stringent, um, like you should always stay the same type mentality? I think that's problematic, and we have to look at that because the saying is women get with men and they want them to change. Men get with women and they hope that they don't change. So we have to look at it from a perspective of growing in the relationship, growing with your partner in the relationship, and not being limited in your mindset. What do you think about
Hmm.
that?
Yeah, that is valid points that you made, and it is also like the thinking. If it's not addressed, if somebody doesn't question their thinking, they're not going to be up to date. They're not going to be knowledgeable. They're going to be stuck. And when you're stuck, it will show in your relationship when you're just going day to day doing your uh planned day. I want to say, like where every day is almost the same, and nothing really changes. You go to work. After work, you might go work out. Then after that, you come home, you eat dinner. Then you go to bed. If you watch a little bit of TV, then you go to bed. So even that routine, even though that's what you do, it can get stagnant, and your relationship can get stuck into like what Keisha was saying, can become boring. And I refer to water. Moving water is living water. If you don't have moving water, it becomes stagnant. It becomes with algae. It grows algae. It's not viable. It will not give life. So, how can you be stuck in your relationship and think that it's going to grow and it's going to thrive and it's going to give life to you and your partner? Just that mindset is not, it's archaic, to live in the past thinking that your future will grow and that will be profound. There's nothing dealing with the future. It's you're living in the past and you're going backwards or you're at a standstill. So all of that thinking has to be, you have to reevaluate. I mean, you go to the doctor in order to make sure that you're healthy, that you get a checkup. Well, you need to check up on your mind, your mindset, and see what's going on there, because you're thinking, and you could see your partner in a certain way as how they are. Maybe you saw them as jovial and clowny, they always make jokes, they always crack jokes. But with this pandemic, everybody has changed in an instant. We're now working from home. We're now spending more time with our family, and some people can have fears that they have come with the pandemic, and they don't really want to go out anymore. They're not as adventurous. So now you don't know your partner because your partner has been in this situation of the pandemic, and you're like, what is going on? Why aren't they as jovial? Why aren't they joking around? Why aren't they doing this? And they probably don't want to say that how they've been affected by the pandemic, because people have egos and they want to be strong, they want to appear strong. So even talking with your partner and just being open and honest with what you're feeling and what you're seeing. You're seeing the changes, and either saying that you like it or you don't like it, or just you're curious about it, or you don't understand it, because that talk will help make your relationship grow, and just setting accepting the what is, and oh, this is marriage, or this is how the relationship is. It will be stagnant, it won't grow. So you do have to make those hard conversations, or see if it's you, see if you're the problem, that maybe your partner since the pandemic has made changes in order to that you see positive changes, or but you're like, okay, they're growing apart from me. Why are they doing this? Why are they all suddenly a health freak, and now I don't relate to them anymore. Maybe it's because of your thinking. Maybe it's because you are in the past and you have to refresh your thinking in order to move and grow with your partner. So,
Yeah. Yeah, because it's funny that a lot of times when you start out in a relationship, because it is new, because there's a lot of unknown, and you're going through a phase of, exploratory phase, you're learning about this other person, you're learning about how they fit within your life, you're finding out the different mentality of this, person that you're attracted to. There's some attraction there, obviously, but then there's a lot of unknowns. And so, as you become more familiar with someone, it should be a lot of times where you are more open to saying, okay, I know more about you, but I'm still understanding that you're an individual, we're different, and there's going to be experiences that your partner, this other person, has that you're not going to have. And you should stay open to that so you can embrace, okay, they've gone through this experience, me and them now are different only because I didn't have that experience, and vice versa, they didn't have an experience you had. So there's going to be some differences along the way in the relationship that you both should embrace, because it's with differences, diversity, that brings sometimes the most harmonious situations. Because if everyone were to be the same in their thinking, like the whole idea of groupthink, if we're all thinking the same, if there's no diversity, that does look boring. And so what happens is when people say sometimes in their relationship, "Oh, this is not exciting anymore. My partner has changed." It's almost like the group thinking idea, that concept of groupthink. Everything needs to be where we're thinking the same, we're enjoying the same music, we're enjoying the same type of entertainment and arts and food and trends and styles. It's a groupthink mentality. So if you're in your relationship and you start to say that it's boring, is it because you've become more immune or conditioned to want to do things the same versus having the element of, that diversity and the complexity of you liking something that is different than your mate, and y'all coming together and having more of an eclectic style that you bring together, that it just brings that element of more of an interesting combination versus
mhm,
you want to still do everything the same, that you might have done in the beginning, because that might have been what attracted you to one another. But then again, I mean, it has to be that we embrace change. I think Sherry and I, we can't emphasize that enough, that you have to be open to that. And that's not just in your relationship, that's just in life. We
mhm,
always, that's one thing that is a constant, and that's change. And so if you're not open to growing in your relationship, not just as an individual, because sometimes people might say, oh, as an individual, yeah, I'm growing. I know that I'm evolving, but I want my partner to be the same. That
right.
just sounds so ridiculous. But I mean, a lot of times people will say that, and they're being very honest. That's what they want. They want the comfort of not having to really adapt to a change in their mate, because sometimes it is scary. It looks like the mate
Mhm,
is changing, and like Sherry said, they're growing apart.
right. And then also, there's a thin line between being comfortable and complacent, you know, not willing or not wanting change, being afraid of change. But we change every day with every experience that we encounter. There is no way that you could stay the same. Even if you took a picture of yourself for a month, you're going to see minute changes in your appearance. So every day you are changing. So, how is it that your mind and your thinking is not changing? We can even have a mindset like, um, Keisha sent me a video of the angry man, and he was comparing the mindset of Fences, and also about the movie Fences, and also about In the Pursuit of Happiness. But in Fences, Denzel's character was talking about how his childhood was, and how his father was very mean, to the point that he said he was evil. He was the devil himself. So that impacted his childhood. That impacted his thinking, and the way he was treated um, by his father. And he said he was so mean. He was that his mother left when he was just, still a child, like 8 years old, 6 or 8 years old. I'm not sure. But in the encounter of him and his father's relationship, his thinking changed, and he was like out on his own because he and his father had a big fight and a big argument, um due to the girl that he was liking, and the father was trying to, I guess, get with the girl, and they had a fight, and he knew that he could not go back home, being that he actually had a physical fight with his dad and he lost. So he ended up walking um to another state in order to make his life. But even though he moved and changed his residence, and changed his whole life, changed in that instant, his thinking was still kind of the same because of the way he made his moves and the way that he interacted, and the woman that he ended up being with. um it was said that he was settling, and he was still acting like his father with his children. It was just, he still had past thinking. And how can you move forward into a new place, into with a new relationship, if you still have thoughts or beliefs in your thinking that is not relevant to today? It's in the 1980s, or like when you were a teenager, and today is 2022. Come on, you have to evolve your thinking. You cannot bring the past into your present, especially in a relationship. It has to be fresh, it has to be new. You should not be afraid of change when you're in a relationship. Keisha, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's like, I'm glad you said that. Bringing your past into your present is so, it's it's an antiquated way of trying to live and restore, or possibly restore, tradition, so to speak. A lot of times people will say, "Oh, um, I want to keep the traditions of what, my grandparents and, my descendants, were doing." And it's understandable that there are specific traditions that we want to keep relevant, and constantly just reinforce those in our family, customs or whatever. The thing that I find to be, like I said, antiquated, is because if you're trying to be practical, let's just say it that way, as to how you're going to live your life in the modern time, the modern world, and especially teaching your children, your grandchildren, what have you, how to navigate and live in this life, you cannot adopt and just be stuck on what was happening in the past. You have to have some flexibility in terms of saying, okay, I know that my grandparents were raising my parents like this, and my parents were raising me like this. It needs to be where you take a little bit from the past to bring that forward, but you're going to have to adopt a new way to go along with some of the tradition, some of, the past thinking. Because if you're
Mhm.
just simply taking all of what was happening in the past, that will never fit within the current times that we're living. And so that's where we never forge and go forward, um forge this new mindset and way of thinking to allow us to advance and grow. It goes back to change is, first of all, change is inevitable, but change is good and change is necessary, because without change, how is there ever going to be growth? So, like
Mhm.
you were saying, if you're going to look at how things were done in the 80s, say for instance, which might I add, the 80s, I love the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. And I want to say, yes, the 80s rocks, because there's a lot of things that I wish I could do with my children, or could have done when they were younger with my children from the 80s, because, yeah, those were fun years for me. But then again, let's be real. My children grew up in the early 2000s. So how in the world am I going to take the 80s and raise them with, what we were doing in the 80s in the early 2000s? That's a 20-year gap.
Mhm.
That's just ridiculous, So, not getting too far off, but it goes to say that we have to make sure that we're using change in an effective manner to grow, to have the ability to not stay stagnant, and ultimately bring about the death of our relationship, our
Mhm.
interactions and engagements with people. Because a lot of times we can have friendships that we're not able to see that our friends, our platonic friends, have grown. They've changed. You might meet someone
Mhm.
in college. None of y'all had children, none of you were married. Some of your friends have gotten married, children, divorced. Their parents might have, passed away. There's a lot of your parent or parents might have passed. There's a lot of different things happening. So we have to keep that in mind so we can not bring death to relationships. And when I use the term death, I mean just not allowing there to be any growth, because whatever is not growing is dying
Mhm.
or
Yeah,
is
and then
dead.
and if you don't want to be, if you don't want to be changed, I mean, I'm sorry, if you do not want to change, I mean, in your relationship, that's what leads to cheating. That's one of the reasons why people will cheat, because they find somebody that is new, that is refreshing, that, is bringing on a change in their atmosphere, and they start talking to that person because that person becomes interesting to them, and it ends up leading, it could be an affair, because just because their partner won't change, and just because the partner is still thinking of them as one way, maybe, it could have been that they cheated, they were a cheater in the past, and that was in the beginning of the relationship, and say, like, the woman now only sees their partner, even though she stayed, she only sees her partner as a cheater. And even though for maybe 2 or 3 years they were going without cheating, just for the fact that that woman will not change her viewpoint of the man, He then goes and cheats because he's like, it's stagnant. You're not changing your viewpoint. I have done this, this, and this, and I have not cheated all this time, for 2, 3 years, but you still see me as how I was in the beginning. That is problematic. You have to change your thinking. Um, because the person, if you do see a person that has changed and has, changed for the better, acknowledge it and don't go back to what you thought it was, because now it's for the better. But because you're still thinking of them, they're like, well, they still see me as a cheater, I might as well go ahead and cheat. And that is not an excuse. I'm not going to say that as an excuse, but that is one of the viewpoints of that. What we're making here is that if you stay and see that person as the same, you're not going to get that evolved person. You're not going to, um I don't want to say relate, but um you're not going to be able to enjoy and bring and have the blessings of how that person has evolved. And it even can go in another way of, the person was great in the beginning. The person was like, I'll say the woman now, the woman was like awesome. She was like a 10, she was like doing for you and all this stuff. But then now children come in, and she can't do everything that she did for you. Um Maybe her body has changed. There's no maybe in it. Being a woman has a baby, the body has changed. So um maybe she doesn't look the same. Um and the man, yeah, they want the woman to stay the same, especially if she's physically fit. They want them to be the same as when they were 18 years old. I do not know a woman that is the same as when she was 18 years old. So of course that change is going to evolve, and the man, he's going to not want to see the changes and appreciate the changes, because the woman is in motherhood. The woman is now more unselfish, I want to say, because motherhood, parents, that is the ultimate of being unselfish. You always thinking of another person, you're always doing, and you always want to do for another person. So that could be problematic in the relationship, because the man did not want her to change and she has now changed.
Yeah, and a
Keisha.
lot of times when you have that dynamic of man and his wife, they go through the honeymoon phase, and there's 2, 3 years they might not even have a child yet, and it's just the two of them. So their life is accommodating the two-party setup, right? Two-person setup household, and a child is born, and undoubtedly both of them, I know, are very happy that they have come together and created this life, and now they have three. um, a lot of times when a child is born, the woman, like Sherry said, the body has changed. I mean, that's without any question. And then the man sometimes is trying to sort in his mind, how am I now going to provide for three? I'm going from two to three. And each one of them is going through a change, a metamorphosis, right? The woman, emotionally, physically, mentally. The man, he's going through something mentally, he's going through something spiritually. And he's trying to understand what she's going through to a certain extent. And she's also looking and trying to understand what he's going through. But if they do not find that space where they are making the room for true understanding and acceptance that each of them have a different perspective of their new situation that they're both in, you can find that there's going to be a breakdown in communication, breakdown in the way that they are going to actually handle the day-to-day responsibilities and just their life together as a family of three. So once again, going back to, there's a change, a great change, a new child, that's a great change, right? However, if they're not looking at this change as something that they're going to themselves have to make a concession to say, okay, well, I no longer can do this. We no longer can do this. We now have to, just making and fine tuning their lifestyle, then there can be, it can be a death. Unfortunately, I
Hmm.
have to go back to saying there can be a slow, and it can be slow. It could be a slow death because miscommunication, lack of communication, what have you, can bring about that slow and very painful death of a relationship. And the relationship can end. And a lot of times that happens because, say, for instance, the man is thinking about providing. He's still in his, masculine energy, looking like, I have to provide, I have to protect my wife and my child. The woman sometimes is so overwhelmed with her responsibility of the new baby that it may appear that she's just neglecting her husband, but it's not neglect. It's trying to find that happy medium of now taking care of the child. She still has to take care of herself. She still has to take care of her body, her mental and emotional wellness is, still important. And she still wants to be there to take care of the needs of her husband as she was doing when there was just a party of two. So there's so many things happening, there's so many moving parts, but they have to be willing to embrace the change and say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're
Hmm.
going to go forward. Going back to the vision board, maybe before the child comes into the world, putting together a vision board and trying to see if you can stick to that, stick
Right.
to that vision board.
Reevaluate. Yeah,
Yeah.
reevaluate, communicate. Those are the things that needs to be in place in order to keep the newness or the refresh the relationship, because maybe now that vision board, some of the things on there might not be feasible because of the change now. Maybe you thought you were only going to have one child, maybe you had twins, you know. And that surprise blessing is now may hinder the fact that you can go on a vacation or travel or do what it is that you had on that board in the time frame that you had it. um it's just reevaluating, keeping your your relationship fresh and up to date.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess at the conclusion, I guess, of all of this, it's about making sure that you do not define your ever changing relationship based on how it started, how you were in the beginning with your mate, how your mate was with you in the beginning. Allowing yourself to reevaluate every couple of years, having those discussions to see each other's perspective, like asking your mate, how do you see our relationship? What does it look like to you? Because sometimes we make assumptions. So a lot of times what we want to do is we want to do the reevaluations every so often. We want to have those conversations. We want to stay open to change. We want to embrace it, knowing that change more so is good than bad, and not allowing ourselves to ever become stagnant, and really looking at your mate in real time. I'll say it like that, in real time. Don't look
Mhm.
at them and say, I remember when, in 1990, you. No, look at them in real time. It's 2022, like Sherry said. What does your mate look like right now? What are their goals? What are their passions today? Not 20 years ago, not 10 years ago, today. And they should
Mhm.
do the same for you. And that way you can
Mhm.
stay aligned and be current and just grow in your relationship, grow with your partner. That's the way that you typically will stay together, is by growing together. So yeah, I guess we can do, if anyone has any questions, like Sherry said, give us your questions. We're still navigating, learning how to navigate this system of
Right.
podcast. But we're so excited because now we're going to be doing our podcast on a weekly. So tune in, join us. We're on YouTube um, under the Enlightened Pathway, and we've been doing this a little over a year and a half. So just bear with us, be patient with us. But Sherry and I, we really enjoy researching and looking into all the areas of human behavior and relationships and social interactions. Anything else you want to say, Sherry?
um No, just, tune in for future topics. And if you have any topics that you might want us to discuss, because we do, like Keisha said, research and try to come up with answers for you guys and stuff that has helped us in our life. Um, Also, we love questions. So the more questions, the better. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on this enlightened pathway. We'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.